Spring of 2025, a gruesome terror attack in Kashmir leaves dozens dead. Within days, India and Pakistan, two nuclear-armed rivals, spiral toward confrontation. Both nations fire warnings. Mobilizations begin. The world holds its breath. This documentary explores how, from a conflict that has simmered since 1947, a modern flashpoint in South Asia could spin out of control and ignite a global catastrophe. Historical background. For over 7 decades, the bitter legacy of the 1947 partition has haunted India and Pakistan. When British India was divided on religious lines, the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir, ruled by a Hindu king over a Muslim-majority population, became the spark for war. Pakistan's tribal militias invaded soon after partition, prompting the Maharaja to accede to India and triggering the First Indo-Pakistani War of 1947-48. The United Nations brokered a ceasefire, the line of control, in 1949, leaving Kashmir divided. Since then, the rivals have gone to war multiple times. Key conflicts include 1947-48, First Kashmir War at Independence. 1965, full-scale war after border clashes. 1971, war leading to East Pakistan's secession, creating Bangladesh. A ceasefire was followed by the 1972 Simla Agreement, which reaffirms the LOC in Kashmir. 1999 Kargil War. Pakistani troops crossed the Low Sea into Kashmir. India pushed them back before the crisis de-escalated. Even without declared wars, violence has surged repeatedly. In 2001 to 2002, a militant attack on India's parliament nearly prompted all-out war. In 2008, militants struck Mumbai, killing 166 people. Each time, rockets and artillery have been exchanged along the Kashmir border. Notably, India and Pakistan have maintained fragile ceasefires since 2003. But daily skirmishes, mortar fire, sniper duels continue to mark the line of control. Key takeaway: the Kashmir dispute is a centuries-old tinderbox. Wars in 1947, 1965, 1971, 1999, and major terror attacks, 2001, 2008, have repeatedly brought the nuclear rivals to the brink. Nuclear arsenals and doctrines. Today, both India and Pakistan are nuclear-armed powers, a fact that vastly raises the stakes of any conflict. According to recent estimates, India possesses roughly 180 nuclear warheads, while Pakistan has about 170. These figures come from independent analysts at the Federation of American Scientists. For decades, India's nuclear policy formally declared a no-first-use NFU pledge, promising to use nukes only in retaliation. Pakistan, by contrast, refuses any NFU commitment and explicitly maintains the option of first use. Moreover, each side's strategic focus differs. India traditionally built its arsenal to deter Pakistan, but has been shifting toward longer-range missiles, some capable of reaching targets in China. Meanwhile, Pakistan emphasizes full-spectrum deterrence, fielding smaller tactical nukes to counter India's superior conventional forces and its cold start doctrine, a plan for rapid strikes into Pakistan. Pakistan's nuclear stockpile is diversified into air, land and sea-launched systems, including short-range battlefield weapons. India also maintains a nuclear triad, land-based missiles, aircraft, and submarines, under strict control. Officially, India's strategy relies on assured retaliation rather than preemption. However, experts note that rhetoric can shift, and recent Indian leadership statements leave NFU open to interpretation. Bullet summary: nuclear postures. India, a 180 warheads 2025 official NFU policy, claims nukes are only for retaliation. Expanding delivery systems, Agni ballistic missiles, Shaurya cruise missiles, etc. Focus is shifting to also deter China. Pakistan, 170 warheads, no NFU. It reserves the right to strike first to blunt an invasion. has specialized low-yield bombs and missiles, for example, NASA missile, intended for short-range battlefield use to offset India's conventional army. Geopolitical alliances. The India-Pakistan flashpoint is enmeshed in a broader web of alliances. India has grown closer to the United States and other democracies under the Indo-Pacific strategic framework. Washington now views India as a key counterbalance to China's rise. In recent crises, the US has publicly backed India's right to defend itself, while quietly pressing Islamabad to calm tensions. For example, after the 2019 Pulwama terrorist attack, American leaders reaffirmed support for India's security and urged Pakistan to rein in militants. One analyst notes that Islamabad fears even moral US support of India in any retaliation. India also cooperates with Japan, Australia, and other Quad partners, though none are treaty allies. Across the border, Pakistan's closest partner is China. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPEC, and extensive arms deals tie Beijing and Islamabad together. China has vowed to support Pakistan's security and has sometimes threatened consequences for India, for example, opposing any change to Kashmir's status. Yet, in practice, China typically urges restraint in crises. As one strategic analysis observes, during the 2019 India-Pakistan standoff, China maintained its distance and urged both sides to exercise restraint. Beijing's main concern is to protect its investments, like CPEC, rather than get drawn into a shooting war. Other players remain cautious. Russia, historically an arms supplier to India and earlier to Pakistan, is distracted by Ukraine. Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and the Gulf states often call for peace. The United Nations regularly appeals for calm. In 2025, the UN called on both sides to exercise maximum restraint as tensions rose. Alliance dynamics. India leverages its partnership with the US and other democracies. India is increasingly seen as Washington's ally against China. Pakistan relies on China's support, diplomatic cover, and weapons. In past crises, the US has acted as a mediator, supporting India's security while pushing Pakistan to defuse conflict. China, for its part, usually stays aloof from direct entanglement, pleading for dialogue. Escalation scenario. What might it look like if a local spark ignites a wider war? Analysts have outlined frighteningly plausible scenarios. Consider the example outlined in Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists. Day 0, terrorist trigger. Militants launch a massive attack in India, targeting a government complex or public site. This act, blamed on Pakistan-based terrorists, kills hundreds of civilians and leaders. This is akin to Mumbai 2008 or Pulwama 2019, but on an even larger scale. Day 1, mobilization and retaliation. India declares it will not tolerate terrorism. Troops amassed along the border and in Kashmir. Indian jets bombed terrorist camps in Pakistan's Punjab province. In 2019, India's Balakot strikes on a camp in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa marked the first airstrike on Pakistani soil in decades. Pakistan retaliates with limited shelling along the LOC. Day 2, incursion and nuclear first use. With tensions sky high, India pushes troops across the de facto border in Kashmir. Pakistani generals, fearing a major invasion, decide to employ nuclear weapons. On Day 2, they detonate about 10 tactical nuclear bombs, each 5 kilotons, at low altitude against advancing Indian armor and bases. These mini-nukes, though smaller than Hiroshima, destroy entire Indian tank columns. Day 3, strategic nuclear exchange. India, reeling, escalates. Prime Minister orders strikes on Pakistani military targets using 20 strategic nuclear weapons, roughly 15 to 50 kilotons each. Fires and firestorms erupt in Bahawalpur and other areas, blasting huge plumes of smoke skyward. Pakistan then answers by launching dozens more nukes, about 30 airbursts on Indian military and urban targets, plus 15 tactical bombs, hoping to break India's will. India responds with nuclear strikes on additional Pakistani bases and cities. By the end of day 3, many dozens of nuclear detonations have occurred. Each side blames the other for stopping the exchange, but the cycle is out of control. This is a stylized timeline, but it is based on detailed modeling by experts. The point is that once nuclear bombs enter the picture, escalation can accelerate uncontrollably. Between 50 and 125 million people might die in the subcontinent alone before global actors even step in. Global consequences, nuclear winter and famine. The immediate devastation in South Asia would be horrifying, but the effects would not stop at the border. Climate scientists have shown that even a regional nuclear war can darken the sky worldwide. The countless firestorms from cities and forests in India and Pakistan would inject massive smoke plumes high into the atmosphere. One study calculated that a South Asian exchange could loft tens of teragrams, tens of millions of tons of soot into the stratosphere. Once there, this black carbon blocks sunlight for months and even years. Global temperatures would fall significantly, in some scenarios dropping to near ice age levels, and rainfall would sharply decline everywhere. The results: a nuclear winter that halts agriculture on every continent. Growing seasons collapse, crops fail, freshwater sources and fisheries are disrupted. Researchers warn bluntly, a nuclear winter would halt agriculture around the world and produce famine for billions of people. In short, even nations far from South Asia would see devastating food shortages. The global economy would stagger under this shock. Cold and darkness. Temperatures could drop by several degrees even at the height of summer, lasting for a decade. Lost harvests. One simulation of modest soot injections, far less than the South Asia War modeled above, showed precipitous declines in corn, wheat, and rice yields across China, North America, and Europe. Famine. Billions may face starvation. The Nature Food study by Xia et al. 2022 concludes that a regional nuclear war could trigger food riots and mass starvation, even in wealthy countries. Scientific verdict. Studies using climate and crop models agree. A nuclear exchange in South Asia would plunge Earth into a prolonged famine. The environmental effects are global, not local. Diplomacy and de-escalation. In real time, governments would frantically work to stop the spiral. India and Pakistan have communication channels specifically to avoid miscalculation. For example, since 2004, they maintain a dedicated nuclear hotline between their foreign ministries to prevent misunderstandings and reduce risks in a crisis. Confidence-building agreements, such as pre-notification of missile tests, have been agreed on to lower fog of war risk. International leaders would also pressure both sides. The United States, China, and the UN would move immediately. In April 2025, even before bombs fell, the US State Department had urged both countries toward a responsible solution to the standoff. Historically, Washington has tended to publicly back India's right to defend itself, while quietly nudging Pakistan to restrain its proxies. China typically calls for calm. It has vital interests in preventing war. Other powers, from Russia to Gulf states, would likely offer to mediate or impose consequences for any nuclear use. There are still off-ramps, back-channel talks, meetings on the sidelines of summits, or third-party mediation could diffuse crises. For instance, after the 2019 Pulwama incident, Pakistan's military quietly signaled willingness to restrain and open channels, fearing US pressure. Diplomatic history shows that when truly threatened with disaster, both countries eventually step back, as they did after the 1999 Kargil confrontation, when intense US pressure and Chinese neutrality forced a ceasefire. But if diplomacy fails, the consequences are unthinkable. Analysts warn that without urgent restraint, the situation cannot be stopped once nuclear weapons start flying. Inaction or miscalculation could mean a world on the brink of collapse. Credits. This analysis relies on expert studies and international reporting. Researchers, Roebuck et al., Toon et al., have modeled how a South Asian nuclear war might unfold, and media from Reuters, Al Jazeera, CFR, etc. track current developments. The peril is very real, and understanding it is the first step toward preventing global catastrophe.